All right, well, we'll go ahead and begin. So we'll see if anybody else joins us here this evening. So, guys, welcome back. It is Tuesday, February 25th. Thank goodness the last Tuesday of February. We're almost through the month. Now, we one of the words we talked about last week was the word trend. A trend is sort of like, something that's kind of popular, something that things have been happening, So often we see lots of trends on the internet, things that have become very popular. So this is one that I've seen a little bit recently. And it's about an older version of you. If you could go back in time and have coffee with your younger self. This has been a trend that I've seen become very popular here in the last few weeks. I've been getting more, messages or stories about people talking about this particular trend, right? This particular sort of idea. Now, I'm not going to necessarily read everything at the link, but I thought I would click on it and talk a little bit about this trend. So, part of this trend was about this poet, this writer, decided to write about meeting her younger self for coffee. Like if you could have a chance to go back in time and meet your younger self and talk about, the things you would, advice that you might give or the changes or things that have happened in your life. So I thought this is an interesting thing. What could we say to ourselves if we think about going into the past? So this particular person decided to write a poem, right? To write some kind of poetry about this experience. So if you notice here, for example, it says this a couple of people shared their expression. So for example, one person said they met their younger self for coffee at 10:15, which is interesting because I think maybe your younger self is still asleep. So maybe you thought, I can't do 8 o'clock in the morning. Let's do 10, which I thought that's interesting, right? Maybe if you were younger, you think, I don't know, 9 o'clock's too early. But anyway, in the discussion, she talks about to describe lovely, compassionate interaction with her young self, but also making a contrast. What are some things that have changed about you as we get older? So anyway, I thought this was kind of interesting. This is the poem here, and I'm not going to read all of it, but I like the idea that it's talking about going back and talking about the things that maybe we would change or maybe we would talk about. In fact, if you notice in the poem here at this part says she would maybe cry a little bit about these changes in her life or the feelings that she has now compared to 15 years ago or 20 years ago. So it's kind of interesting. I think it's an interesting idea for us to think about here. It always makes for a good conversation piece. So again, this has become kind of an interesting trend. I've seen more and more people writing about this. And maybe one reason people are writing about this is because now the internet, I mean, how old is the internet? I mean, if you think about it, I mean, most people have been on Facebook or online for at least 15 years, 20 almost. Gosh, if you think about it, I don't know when you joined Facebook. Do you guys remember what year you joined Facebook? So, like for Yane, I know you're on Facebook. Do you remember what year you joined?
Yes, 2006.
So you're earlier than I am. I joined in 2008.
I
So you've been
remember hearing why the reason.
so you've been on there for almost 19 years.
Yes, no,
Wow.
because I follow one actress in the MySpace,
MySpace, yeah.
and suddenly I saw the link and I push it and this opening Facebook for first time.
And I'm sure you were like, this Facebook looks terrible. I'm going to go back to MySpace, right? I remember for you when my wife joined MySpace. I think it was 2004 or 2005, and I thought, what is MySpace? That sounds terrible. So now everyone, of course, yeah, on social media. Now, Hishani, I know you're on Instagram. When did you join Instagram, Hishani?
Like 10 years ago.
Wow, me too. Yeah, but in the beginning, I didn't do anything. Like in 2014, my wife said, "Hey, you got to join Instagram." So she signed me up, and then I did nothing for about a year. I put one picture, and that was it. So you've been on there almost 10 years too. Okay. Yeah, so it's funny to think about that. I think this particular idea has become popular because honestly, a lot of people grew up with the internet, right? Grew up with this, and now they're older, 20 years older, maybe. So I think it's interesting to think about. So we're going to talk about that. And then I have a great expression. I think this is a great expression to learn here tonight because it really does describe what we're talking about the changes that we would make in our lives. And then we're going to continue on in our lesson, looking at some vocabulary and start the listening part of that exercise. But let's go back now to that idea. Okay, so Min and Maria, if you just joined us, that's okay. We've been talking about a very popular trend for people to talk about going back in time and talking to your younger self, right? So the idea is if you could go back in time and have a cup of coffee with your younger self. Okay, now I am asking everybody, I want you to think for just a moment. What is one piece of advice that you would give your younger self? So let's say, for example, you go back in time, I don't know, 20 years. Okay, let's just choose a number 20 years. If you could go back in time 20 years ago, or, maybe 15, what piece of advice would you give? All right, now think about it for a moment. And when you're ready, you can put your answer in the chat or use the mic. Okay, so think about it for a moment. What piece of advice, what would you say to your younger self if you could go back in time?
I have one.
Okay, let's hear it for
Try,
you.
try to learning English early and try to take your time for enjoy the free time and try to take in the time for thing or stuff.
Okay. Now for you, and I said only one. Okay. So maybe we could do the free time one. All right. So enjoy the free time. All right. Always trying to get more for you. Okay. All right. So again, I'll give you a moment to think about it. Now again, if you want to use the chat, that's fine. Or if you want to use the mic, that's fine too. Okay. So anyone else? Anyone else? Everyone is going to answer the question. So you can put it in the chat or you can use the mic. So think about it. Now I'll explain mine. I think what I would say to my younger self, honestly, if I could go back 20 years, maybe, this is what I would say. Here's what I would say. Because right now I'm thinking, getting closer and closer to retirement. So guys, I put my answer in the chat. Save more money. Invest your money. Don't spend it on stupid things. Take that money and invest. Because we're thinking about the future now, thinking about retirement sometime soon. So that's what I would tell myself. Save more money, invest it. Now, I don't know if that wouldn't make me rich, but still. All right. So Min, have you been thinking about it?
For me, maybe travel to more places.
So you mean like what? Before you get married or before you have kids or what?
Yes.
But what if your younger self says, I have no money?
Yes.
Would you take some money and give it to your younger self? Would you say, here, take this money now?
Probably.
Yeah, some people are like, Mr. John, that will affect the future. And I'm like, hey, give me the money. Let me have it. Yeah, that's definitely one thing I would think of, man. If I could go back in time and give myself more money, that would really help. So, but I like that. Maybe travel before those things. Okay. Any particular places, Min?
I didn't even travel much, many places in my home country. So
Okay. So maybe even travel around more there. Actually,
yeah.
that's a great piece of advice. I'm thinking about that now. honestly. Obviously I like taking pictures, and I think about, oh, I don't have time to go. Sometimes I think about going back to a particular place, and then I realize I don't have that much time. I need to go see new places. So I do agree with you. I have not looked or been across America enough.
Yeah.
So that's a good point. Okay. All right. Excellent advice. I like it, man. All right, Maria, what advice would you give your younger self? Anything specific? One piece of advice.
I think it's the same that already said friend.
Okay.
I many times I thinking that I I should I should
Should have studied or should have done
have
something.
studied early English
Okay.
and also practice maybe an sport.
So some kind of activity. Okay.
Yeah, some kind of activity. Yeah.
But now, I mean, now you can go walking. I mean, that's an activity, right?
Yes.
But what would you say to your younger self? Like what? Learn tennis or play soccer or
Yes.
something?
Try different sports and have more activity.
Okay. I think that's a
Mm,
good thing to think about. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because then later in life you might be, more connected to them. Okay.
Mhm.
All right. Okay. All right, Hishani, you're last. What do you think, Hishani? What's one piece of advice you would say to your younger self?
Do you like, not parents like, especially,
Oh,
especially high school? My experience is I like to do dancing. My big dream is to be a dancing teacher, but my parents not like, and they
I know.
decided to I do commerce, but I'm not successful.
Well, and Hishani, of course, I know if you come from cultures where parents have a lot of,
Yeah.
influence, yeah, that's very difficult to say no to your parents, right? I'm sure. Now, I think I told you this before, Hishani. Do you remember? I had a friend from Sri Lanka many, many years ago.
Yeah.
Do you remember? Okay, so
Yeah.
you may remember I told you he wanted to be a musician. He
Mm-hmm.
wanted to be a pianist, but his parents said he had to be a doctor.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
My
he
country doesn't like to do arts, dancing, music.
yeah, yeah. Well, he was so you could see he was so disappointed. He really wanted to study piano. He's my father was his professor. Taught him
Mhm.
music, and he so desperately wanted to follow that dream.
Yeah.
But instead, yeah, he became a doctor, and honestly, he probably was successful. But I understand it's difficult to say no to mom and dad. I know,
Yeah.
and
It's
I
my
think
culture.
yeah, and I think especially because they were paying for they were probably paying for it too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Hashani, I know. But now are you still dancing a little bit? You doing a little bit of dancing?
No, I
No.
completely stop.
Oh man. Well, guess what,
I'm so
Hashani?
sad, but
Okay. Well, but you know what? You can always start again. Okay. So
we'll see.
maybe when the kids are in school, right? Okay. There you go. Well, I think, but I do understand, Ashani. I know you have a
Mhm.
dream, you want to follow it. I do. I understand
Yeah.
that. Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that. That's very interesting advice. I think that's very good advice. Yeah. Now, of course, there are a lot of pieces of advice I'm sure many of you are thinking of right now, but I asked for only one, right? So I think all of you gave a good example. Now, I always tell my students, of course, yeah, it would be great to go back and say, oh, I should have studied this language, for example, or I should have done this. Or we often think about the things we would like to change. But of course, we could also think of it in a positive way too. Like, look at me now. Maybe when you were younger, you weren't you were worried about being successful, or you were worried about having a family. Maybe you could also say to your younger self, hey, I'm pretty good here. I'm not so bad. So I think we should also think in the positive way too. We don't always have to think in a negative way. But I have perfect expression. And in fact, Maria, you actually said the expression, or at least you said something close to the expression. So guys, this expression, I think, is the perfect thing for us to learn here this evening. So everybody, let's turn on the microphones. Come on, guys, turn on those microphones. Let's say this expression together. Okay, so guys, repeat after me. Shoulda, coulda, woulda.
Shoulda, coulda, woulda.
Woulda.
Shoulda, coulda, woulda.
Shoulda, coulda, woulda.
Woulda.
Okay, now you can turn off the mics there for a moment. Now, basically, Maria, this is exactly what you were talking about for earlier. I should have studied more English. That was your example, right? Or Hishani mentions I would have studied dance if, right, my parents, So shoulda, coulda, woulda, this particular expression comes from the idea that it's regret, right? A regret we have about a decision from the past that we did or we didn't make. Now, this expression comes from the fact that we reduce should have, could have, and would have. So this is a nice little moment to talk about pronunciation. So if you remember, in English, oftentimes we reduce language. So for example, should have, right? So should have, we eliminate or kind of cut most of the word, and we have should have, right? So if we keep reducing the sound, should have, should have, should have, and then it gets even smaller, shoulda, shoulda. So basically what this is this is a reduction of those three words. But guys, if you remember a few weeks ago, we were talking about things we wish we could change, right? Or we wish we could do if I had $1 million, or but this one is talking specifically about things from the past. So again, in thinking about Maria, your situation, I shoulda studied English, right? For Ian, I should have studied more English. Well, so someone might use this expression and they might say to you, well, shoulda, coulda, woulda, right? In other words, you can't really change it now. Yeah, so in this case, it means it's from the past. We can regret our decisions, but we also can't change them, or at least we can't change those decisions. Now, we can make new decisions, right? So Hishani, you can still dance, you can still do it. But the idea is we use this expression to show our regret, how we wish we could have done something differently. So in thinking about this expression, now we're going to do a couple of short dialogues. Now, as you can guess, in each dialogue, in each of these two dialogues, so there are going to be two in this activity, in each dialogue, a person has made a decision, but is now regretting that decision. They wish they could have done something else. And you'll notice in the example, someone tells them, well, shoulda, coulda, woulda, right? Like, it's too late. You can't change anything. It's regret over something, but you can't do anything about it. So the two questions are also asking the same situation. Now, what I would like to do is let's do the first one here together, okay? I'd like to do the first dialogue together and then go into the breakout room to do the second dialogue, okay? So I think this will give us a good opportunity to talk about the question together, and then you guys can do the second one in the breakout room. So I'm going to ask Hishani, you're going to be A in this dialogue, and Maria, you're going to be B, okay? All right, so Hishani, you get to start.
Oh, I hate my new job. I wish I had never taken it.
I told you.
I should have taken that other job offer. Their salary wasn't as good, but it sounded like more fun. Why did I take it?
I told you so. Shoulda, coulda, woulda. I knew you could regret it.
I know. I should have listened to you.
Okay. Now, let's look at the question. So, Min, would you read the question for us?
Oh, okay. What would you do in this situation? would you quit the new job and try to find another job? Or would you stay in a new job and hope it gets better?
So, men, we'll start with you. What would you do in this situation? Would you quit or would you stay?
I may stay because it says like, oh, it's fun, have fun.
So, in this case, this job sounds more fun, but maybe it's not really fun, or do you think
The
it could be
story
fun?
wasn't good, but it sounded like more fun.
Yeah, so I think in this case you chose the job because it paid better money. So the question here, men, is what's important to you? The money or to enjoy what you do?
I may choose enjoy.
So in this case, do you think you would quit the job and look for another one?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Some people would say no. They would say the money's too good. So interesting. So you would quit and find another one. Okay. All right. All right. So Friane, what about you? What would you do, Friane? Would you quit or would you stay?
Well, I can analyze more deep before taking the choice because sometimes the stuff when they sound good is something happening not so good.
So in this case, you would quit.
Mm, well, for the first bill, yeah, it's possible. For the first bill,
Yeah, but in this case, it's already happened, right? You already got the job. So I don't know, guys. The money's
no,
always pretty good,
I
right?
need more information, Mr. John.
Okay, okay. Well, next time, Friane, you can look with more information. All right, now Maria, you were the friend in this conversation. It's not very friendly, Maria. You were saying, "I told you so." Do you?
I, I don't know, because sometimes it's funny because maybe we feel more comfort in our zone of comfort.
Mm-hmm.
No, I don't know. Maybe we hate because why? I mean, sometimes when we start a new job, always is a challenge. We have a
Yeah, that's a
challenge,
good point. That's a good point.
but after some time, we maybe feel better. No, because it's it's a it's a challenge when we feel better when we complete some task.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Well, I
Uh,
mean, I think you make a good point. We when we start any job, at first it's difficult to learn new things, or maybe it might be it's scary, or maybe there's something about the job that we're not familiar with. But if we just wait or take more time, maybe it gets better.
yes.
Yeah, maybe. Okay. I mean, that's certainly true. Sometimes people want an instant, reaction. Like if they start the job in a week, they might say, "Oh, I hate this job." Well, I mean, a week is not a long time. Now, in this example, we don't know necessarily how much time. It does say it's a new job, right? So we don't really know how new. But that's a good point. Maybe it will get better. All right, now Hashani, you're the poor person in the situation. So what do you think, Ashani? Are you going to quit? Or are you going to stay?
No, while doing this job, I try to find new job.
Okay, so you're thinking, okay, I can keep this job, but maybe look around. So,
Yeah.
well, that people do that too. Hey, people do that too, and maybe the job you're at, maybe it gets better. Who
Mhm.
knows? Yeah. So, but sometimes we need to leave, right? So I hate this job. So in this case, I think that's good advice. Okay. So maybe Hishani, this is another thing you can tell your younger self, right? When you go back in time, you could say, just stay at that job, or you can look for another job while you're looking for while you're at this one. All right. So see, now you're thinking. All right. Okay, great. Okay, so now let's go into the breakout room. Let's let you guys try the second situation. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing the screen. Let's try a little breakout activity where you two now are trying it. All right. Okay. All right, guys, the breakout rooms are ready. I will be there in just a moment. And again, we'll take about 3 or 4 minutes to do the next one. Okay, so guys, get ready. Here we go. All right, Yasushi.
Hi.
We just went into the breakout room, so I'll send you into the room. We haven't even started the activity, so don't worry.
Okay.
Let me give me just a second.
Okay.
I need to upload an activity, so let me do that right now. And then I'll put you in one of the rooms.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, give me just a second here. All right, looks like everybody is just about back. All right. So before we answer the question, let's talk about the conversation. So in the conversation, someone has bought a used product, right? A used cell phone, for example. So first off, guys, do you guys ever buy any used electronics or used products, like from the kitchen or anything like that, like going to a thrift store or Goodwill? Anybody here buy any used products? Yeah, Frieen, what do you like to buy?
I buy two things: the MetaQuest and the Apple Watch.
So what do you think? Are they still working?
Excellent.
Okay. And so a lot cheaper too, I'm sure. All right, Maria, what about you?
I bought a cell phone, used cell phone in Mexico,
Yeah.
and it works well.
So okay, so not like the conversation then. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's a good. So sounds like we've had good experiences here. Anyone had a negative experience buying something used? Like a used car, for example? Really? So no negative experiences. Interesting. Interesting. Okay. Well, I was just curious because my wife is always laughing at me because I'll buy used electronics or used something, and she'll say, "Why are you buying that? It's just, what if it breaks?" So unfortunately, sometimes it does, right? Sometimes it does. Okay, so let's think about the question now. So thinking about the past, right? We were talking about going back and talking to our younger self. So in this case, I was kind of getting you to think about, should we, regret decisions we've made in the past? Or do we think it's better to focus on the future? Is it better to think about how to go forward, not backwards? So what do you think, guys? How did you answer this question? So, Min, what do you think, man? Do you regret decisions, or do you try to focus on the future?
I sometimes regret the decision I made.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what do you do? Do you just worry and feel bad about things, or?
No, I usually regret something I bought, but I barely use it, or I never use them. But now I I changed my habits.
Well, so for example, do you try to think? You try to think more before you buy something? Do you try to sell the products you bought before?
We tried last year in August. My neighbor launched a street sale,
Okay.
brush sale. So our street, so
Oh, nice.
many houses, so many neighbors. We all joined that event, but I couldn't. And I saw some my baby's stuff, but
Okay.
just too cheap.
Well, that's now. See, my wife, we did this many years ago, and my wife hated the experience. She's like, we put all this work and this effort,
Yeah.
and what did we make? $50 or I don't know. So,
Yes.
and she's like, so. But here's the problem, man. So right now in our basement, we've got junk, we've got stuff to get rid of. And so
Yeah.
I told my wife, look, we've lived in this house now like 23 years, 22, 23 years. We have a lot of junk. We must get rid of it. We have to.
That's
So
what I saw. So I get rid of. I gave away some to people.
See, that's what I want to do. I want to get rid of it. My wife's like, no, we've got to make money on this. And I thought, do you remember that yard sale from 20 years ago?
It was very hard in the.
Yeah, see, that's the problem. Yeah. You can't have a yard sale in the winter time.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I was very excited to expect for the.
Yeah.
I told my husband, "Oh, I would never do garage sale."
Yeah, we're done. Yes, it was not as fun as I thought. Yes. Well, but man, it sounds like you at least tried to fix the problem a little bit. But I understand. Yeah, sometimes we buy stuff and we don't think, why did I buy that? Right. So yeah, getting rid of it's even more of a problem. So, all right. So Min says she regrets some things. All right. Anybody here in the class always try to think about the future? Do we have any people who focus on the future? What do you think? Yeah, Fareem?
I'm focused because I can change in the past, but not for this reason. I don't feel pain for that one.
So in this case, you are always thinking about the future.
And try to watch into the future.
Well, I think it's a good attitude. I know it's not easy, but part of me is like that for you. And I'm sorry if I made a mistake or if I did something, but I can't really change it. So I can just try to be a better person in the future, right? No, that doesn't always work, but I try, right? I think that's a good point. Okay. All right, Hishani, what about you? What do you think, Hishani? Are you still thinking about the past? Are you still thinking about dancing, or are you only thinking about the future?
Sometimes I sad, but I know better is the focus on the future because I I can't go back.
Yeah.
So it's the good thing is the focus on the future.
Well, so I think that's important to remember. So just remember, Hishani, you can always try again, right? But I do understand. I really do. I think about some opportunities. Maybe I should have done this, or maybe I should have done this. I can't change it, right? I know. I may be sad. Yeah, I may be sad about it a little bit, but I can't change it. Yeah, I can't change it. Okay. All right. All right. So Maria, what do you think, Maria? Are you a future focused person? Are you focusing on the future?
I think both.
Really?
Sometimes,
Okay.
yeah, sometimes I spend time regretting my decisions, but also I'm thinking on the future.
Well, I certainly think that it's human, right? It's human to think about the past. It's human to think you want to make changes.
Yes,
Yeah. Yeah, so it's hard to say that, yeah. I definitely agree that I kind of feel both, but I also kind of agree with Freeing. I'm trying to think more about the future because I can't change the past, right? Can't do it. So, all right. Well, guys, thanks for sharing your opinions on that. I really appreciate it. I know it's hard sometimes to think about the past or to think about the things we did in our past, but I do think, honestly, I do think that we really can only change what's ahead of us. But that doesn't mean we can't be sad about choices from the past. So again, this expression shoulda, coulda, woulda. This expression is kind of saying, okay, I can't change the past. I can't do anything about it, right? So often we say this shoulda, coulda, woulda because we do have regret, right? We hoped we could change something, but can't always do it. So if you notice here in my two pictures, right? See my two photos here. She's over here singing shoulda, coulda, woulda. Maybe she's singing a song about the past. But I also think this man down here, I should have known better. That's kind of what this means, right? I should have known better. I should have done this. I should have done this. I could have done this. But in the end, I didn't, right? We didn't do it. We couldn't do it. So in this case, well, maybe we're sad about it. All right, thanks, guys. So let's move on now in our lesson. So we don't want to regret that, right? We want to continue. So now, last week, we started looking at vocabulary words. So I would like to go ahead and bring back for just a moment the list of vocabulary words that we have started to look at. Now, I've got a lot of words here on the list, words we're going to continue to talk about. And so, for example, since we just discussed the idea of a trend, let's go back and talk about a trend, right? So a trend is sort of like a popular fashion or a popular activity that everyone is following at the moment. So when we talk about trends, trends are things that we follow, right? So we mentioned in the beginning of class that I've seen a lot of trends on the internet talking about things that people wish they could do, right, to go back in time. So we talked about trend a little bit here today. Let's go back to the word costly. If you remember, we talked a little bit about the idea of costly in our last class, but I'd like to give a little more information about it, just kind of review. So one thing we talked about was that the word costly is kind of similar to expensive, right? When something is expensive, that we often kind of use the word costly in the same way. However, costly has, I think, a stronger or more negative association. So, for example, when something is costly, it really does cost us in sort of a negative way, not just about time. I mean, not just about money, for example, but it could be costly in other ways. So, when we think about something that's costly, it's probably affecting us in a negative way, possibly even hurting us. So, companies, for example, can often have costly mistakes. These particular mistakes might be expensive, but they might also cause, I don't know, some public relations problem, like a bad relationship. Maybe people think of them in a bad way. So things that are costly are not just expensive, but they also can affect us in a very negative way. So that's why you might see the idea, for example, of a costly mistake. So a costly mistake might cause us to lose our job, for example, or as we said before, cause some bad relationship with someone or something. So in this case, yes, we talked a little bit about the idea of a costly situation. So again, similar to expensive. Not exactly, but similar. Okay. Now, we're going to continue to review some of our vocabulary words. So let's talk about a couple of more here before we return to our actual lesson. Now, some of these are words that we're going to talk about in relationship to the actual listening activity, right? So that's going to be helpful as we get closer to that. So if you notice, part B here on our list talks about that these are words we're going to hear in our listening exercise. So we'll talk a little bit more about those after we've done some listening. Let's go over, though, to the right side and look at some of the words here on the right. For example, let's talk about the last one here, to use to your advantage. Now, class, can someone give us a definition or an idea of what advantage means? What does it mean when we have an advantage? Can someone think of a similar word or maybe explain the idea when we have an advantage? Or maybe what an example of an advantage might be? What do you think?
They might be replaced skill.
Well, give us a little more information.
Skill and ability.
Okay, so for example, if I have this skill and ability to do something, so how would that be an advantage to me? Like if I use it to my advantage.
Use to your advantage.
So notice it says to your advantage. So, for example, the word advantage might be skill or ability, but notice the expression says to use to your advantage.
Yeah. So can I say use to your skills?
I
It
don't.
doesn't work.
It doesn't quite work. I do think, though, that it does convey a positive idea. I do think it is referring to it in a positive way. So if I use something to my advantage, what do you think I'm going to get from the situation? Like if I have skills and I have this ability, what do you think I'm going to get? What do you think?
Get your knowledge.
So it might help me in learning more, maybe getting a better job, maybe making better decisions. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I think we're going in the right direction. All right. Let's see if someone else can help us out. Come on, guys. Anybody else have a thought? I think we're going in the right direction. Anyone else have a thought? Okay. Go ahead, Min.
For example, if I can say my age is my disadvantage, but it might be my advantage also. Because
Well, explain.
maybe I'm more patient and maybe steady and
Okay.
Yeah.
So if I use something to my advantage, that means I understand that I can benefit from this situation, from this particular skill or this ability, or for example, my age.
I'm sorry, you say disability?
No. So for example, my skill, Yasushi mentioned the word skill, ability. You mentioned like my age. I'm guessing you mean like experience, for example. So are you saying that these might be a benefit?
Benefit,
What do you think?
it could be.
Okay. So if I use to my advantage, that means that I'm to use my skill, ability, maybe, something else.
I don't know if I can say the pro and the cons or your mirrors.
Well, you're getting closer. I think so, certainly. Yeah, I think you're kind of thinking about what is it that you have, maybe compared to somebody else. So when you mention age, in some situations, your age could help you, right? Because then you could say, I have experience. I think in other situations, like men, if I wanted to be a professional basketball player,
Yeah, that's
Is-
my disadvantage.
Yeah, I don't think that my brain might be better, but my body is not, right? So, all right, but I do like your example about that. So I think what we're saying here, so I think we'll take Yasushi's idea and your idea, maybe put them together, to use my skill, ability, and so on to benefit me in specific situations. So, like you said, there could be times where I have the advantage, I have the skill or ability, and other people do not. And then, of course, I try to figure out how is it going to benefit in this situation. Now, you are correct when you think about pros and cons. I think in this case, I think about what are the good things and the bad things about it. But an advantage is basically something that you might have that other people don't, right?
Mhm.
So I think in this case, your example would be correct. My age might be my benefit. It might be my advantage. All right. So men, let me finish with that question. So in what situations do you think your age might be your advantage?
Uh, taking of children uh, or doing the housework.
It's really? You think that's a good example? Well, I do like the first one. I think taking care of kids is a good example. Maybe even teaching.
Mhm.
I think, for example, when I started teaching, guys, I was really young. And in fact, the truth is, man, sometimes I was not much older than the high school students I was teaching. I did not feel that was my advantage. But as I get older, okay, I know things now. I know more things. I can handle things better. So in this case, maybe like a supervisor, like you said, watching kids, for example, teaching. These are all good examples, I think, where my age might be my advantage.
Mhm.
Okay, I like it. Very good. Okay, so let's add that to our description. So using something to benefit me in specific situations. So for example, so like you said, my experience might help me get a job over other people. So that is my advantage. So when we use something to our advantage, we use it to our benefit. So again, it could be a skill. So Yasushi, you mentioned skill or ability, but it doesn't have to be. There could be many things that we have an advantage of. For example, if I if I needed to get something from a tall place, well, if I'm taller, that's my advantage, right? I think my wife married me because I was taller than she was. I think that's the only reason, because now I can get things on the higher shelf. I'm beginning to think that's the maybe one of the only reasons why she married me. I don't know. I'm just kidding. But the idea is, yeah, if you put something on a high shelf, it's a real advantage if you're tall, right? So in this case, I think that could be a good one. All right. So, hey, we've gotten off to a good start here with our vocabulary words. Now, of course, our goal is we want to finish this list. So I think we're going to be able to finish it probably in the next week. But again, I think you probably know many of the other words on the list. And especially today, we're going to listen and probably hear all of the words that we see here. Now, real quickly, you don't have to turn on your microphones. Okay, it's not necessary. But if you would like, why don't you repeat these words with me? Let's focus on part B. Okay, so again, no microphones. You can just say that with me. Okay, so a number of, college credit, common, depends on, discrimination, factor, in order to. Okay. Now, if you notice, we've already defined 2 of the words on the list. We mentioned college credit, which is a credit you receive for taking classes. And then factor, someone defined factor as an aspect of something. So, for example, there are a lot of factors when we're paying for something. So something that's a factor plays a part in why we choose to do something. So if I think about many factors may help me decide on buying a new car, right? I think about the cost of the car, how much money I have, how much time do I have to pay for this car. There are a lot of factors that might affect how we choose to do what we do. So we already have 2 definitions. And I think, again, we're not going to worry so much about these other words right now. What I want us to do here this afternoon is I want us to go ahead and listen to the activity. And then as we go back in the next week or so, next class or so, we're going to talk about these words a little bit more. But our goal here this afternoon is to try to focus on the basic meaning of the listening exercise. And that's what I want us to do here this afternoon. So I'm going to come back to Burlington and come back to our lesson. And it's time to look at the listening exercise. Now, as we are listening to this activity, I'm going to put in the chat, I'm going to put 4 questions. Okay? And that way you'll be able to look at the questions at the same time as you're listening. Sometimes it's hard to look at the screen and listen at the same time. So everybody, if you'll go to the chat, I've put these 4 questions. So let's take a look at them. So the first question, why are older people returning to school? Number 2, what are 2 challenges that older people face when they go back to school? Okay, number 3, what issues do older people have when compared to younger students? And finally, when should students begin to make professional connections? Now, we're going to think about those 4 questions because here's what we're going to do. I'm going to bring up the listening activity, and we're going to listen to this particular conversation, this particular discussion 2 times. Okay, so I want to play it twice. Now, as we're playing it, I want you to look at those 4 questions and try to answer them. Now, you don't have to write them down or anything. If you want to, that's fine. But we're just concentrating on the basic answers to those questions. Now, what we're going to do in just after we listen for 2 times, we'll go into the breakout room briefly, and I'll let you guys work together to answer those 4 questions. Okay? So the idea is we'll listen to it twice, listen to it 2 times, go into the breakout room, discuss those 4 questions, and then come back and answer them here in the main room. So I'm going to go ahead now and bring up the listening exercise. Now, as you can see here, we got a group of people, right? So looks like maybe where do you think they might be? What kind of situation is this, do you think? Anyone have an idea? Any guesses?
So I saw the younger using tablet and the older using laptop. Well, the another one have one book? No. I don't
Well,
know.
I don't know. The woman behind her seems to have some papers. So, so at this point for Yane, I think I don't know if technology is the solution, but it looks like maybe you think maybe they're in a class.
I guess including for adapting because they have time for working and they have on the past maybe another another responsibility. So when they
Okay.
back to the school, the process for adapting and try to take in the line too fast is a little bit hard.
Okay. So maybe maybe that's why they're there. Yeah. So maybe it might be a classroom, might be a I don't know, training. Who knows? Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off my microphone and camera. We're going to listen 2 times, and remember, look at those 4 questions in the chat. Okay. So look at those 4 questions. Think about the answers to them as you're listening. All right, so guys, here comes the first listen. Here we go.
I'm Mark Todd, and you're listening to College and Career. Today, more and more people are going back to school in their 30s, 40s, and even their 50s in order to help their careers. Our guest on today's show is Patricia Tran from City University. She's going to talk to us about this growing trend. Welcome to the show, Patricia.
Thank you for having me.
First, how common is returning to school later in life?
Very. More than 40% of all college students are now over 25, and about half of those are over 35.
Why is this happening?
Well, there are a number of factors. Some people are finding that they need higher level qualifications to get a better job in their field. Other people are retraining in a different field to improve their job prospects. They know they need to go back to school, and they don't want to put it off until it's too late.
Getting a degree is costly, though, isn't it?
Yes, but there are ways of lowering the costs. You can sometimes get college credit for work experience, or even test out of some classes. You can also save money if you take some introductory courses at a community college. These courses are usually pretty inexpensive.
What kinds of challenges do older students face when they go back to school?
It really depends on the individual and field of study. If you rarely have to read or use a computer in your job, and you suddenly have to spend hours doing research, that can be difficult. On the other hand, there are a lot of advantages to being an older student.
Like what?
Research shows that older students are more focused and better able to manage their time, and their work experience can help them. If you're studying business management, for example, and you already own a store, you probably know more about business than most of your younger classmates. Sharing your knowledge can be very rewarding not only for you, but for the class as well. Most teachers love teaching older students.
That's interesting, but what about after you graduate? Is age discrimination in the workplace a problem? Is it harder to find a job in midlife?
It can be harder for older people to find jobs. That's why it's important to network while you're still in college. Get to know your professors and find out about work opportunities or internships. Older people are usually very motivated, and they know more about the work world than most younger people. They can use that knowledge to their advantage.
I see. Well, thanks for being with us, Patricia.
Okay, so I'm going to play it one more time. And again, look at those 4 questions in the chat, and then we're going to return to the breakout room, and you guys can discuss those 4 questions. So one more time, here we go.
I'm Mark Todd, and you're listening to College and Career. Today, more and more people are going back to school in their 30s, 40s, and even their 50s in order to help their careers. Our guest on today's show is Patricia Tran from City University. She's going to talk to us about this growing trend. Welcome to the show, Patricia.
Thank you for having me.
First, how common is returning to school later in life?
Very. More than 40% of all college students are now over 25, and about half of those are over 35.
Why is this happening?
Well, there are a number of factors. Some people are finding that they need higher level qualifications to get a better job in their field. Other people are retraining in a different field to improve their job prospects. They know they need to go back to school, and they don't want to put it off until it's too late.
Getting a degree is costly, though, isn't it?
Yes, but there are ways of lowering the costs. You can sometimes get college credit for work experience, or even test out of some classes. You can also save money if you take some introductory courses at a community college. These courses are usually pretty inexpensive.
What kinds of challenges do older students face when they go back to school?
It really depends on the individual and field of study. If you rarely have to read or use a computer in your job, and you suddenly have to spend hours doing research, that can be difficult. On the other hand, there are a lot of advantages to being an older student.
Like what?
Research shows that older students are more focused and better able to manage their time, and their work experience can help them. If you're studying business management, for example, and you already own a store, you probably know more about business than most of your younger classmates. Sharing your knowledge can be very rewarding, not only for you, but for the class as well. Most teachers love teaching older students.
That's interesting. But what about after you graduate? Is age discrimination in the workplace a problem? Is it harder to find a job in midlife?
It can be harder for older people to find jobs. That's why it's important to network while you're still in college. Get to know your professors and find out about work opportunities or internships. Older people are usually very motivated, and they know more about the work world than most younger people. They can use that knowledge to their advantage.
I see. Well, thanks for being with us, Patricia.
Okay, so I'm going to send you guys to the breakout room, and I'm going to put all of you in the same room. Okay, so I'm just going to send you to the same room, and I want you to discuss these questions. I'll put the questions again in the chat. We'll take about maybe 3 or 4 minutes, and then we'll return and check our answers. Okay? All right, so guys, once again, we're going to just go ahead and put everyone. All right, I think that's everybody. Okay. Now, what I did was I took the questions from Burlington. I changed them a little bit to make them more sort of open-ended questions, or at least questions where you're looking for a specific answer, but I didn't want to give you the choices. But let's take a look at the questions the way Burlington has worded them. You will see that they're kind of similar. So, for example, question number 2 is basically asking why. So why are older people returning to college? So Maria, let's take a look at those 3 choices. We have to advance in their field, to get a job in a new field, or could it be both?
I believe could be both.
Okay, so let's check. So, sorry. All right. Sorry, guys. I'm trying to click on the link there. Okay. All right. Well, that's not what I wanted to do. There we go. Okay. So you are correct. So both, yes. So both advancing in their field and getting a new job. All right. Very good, Maria. Okay. Let's move on to our next question. Now, remember, again, I asked the questions a little bit differently. So, for example, the second question asked about the 2 challenges. So let's take a look here at question 4. All right. So, Min, this one's for you. It says 2 challenges older students face are, now look at the choices for A, B, and C. Is it A, studying after a long break and using technology, focusing on schoolwork and managing their time, or sharing their knowledge and doing research? So which one?
A.
Okay, you are correct. So one of the things we learned, and we probably already know, we're adults too, right? Going back to school after a long period of time, and maybe technology. So for Ian, looks like you observed that pretty well in the picture. We noticed there were different technologies there in the room. And again, I like the fact that the older person there, I think she's got a tablet, but it looks like she's also looking at papers too. So, okay. Now thinking about the issues that students face, this will be number 5. All right, Freeine, so take a look at number 5. So compared to younger students, older students have more work experience, have more difficulty concentrating, or both A and B? What do you think?
I lost my answer, but I guess is the A.
Okay, let's check it out. Congratulations. Now, of course, there are challenges too, but I think in the listening exercise, they mentioned the advantage really of having more experience. Okay. All right. I think that's a good one. All right. So, Hishani, let's try the last one there. Okay. So it says it's important to start making professional connections. Now, do you remember when they mentioned this in the article? Was it at work, in college, or after graduating?
in college.
All right, let's check. Congratulations. Now, of course, Ashani, it's a little too late for us to do that now, right?
Yeah.
So, of course, this advice is kind of talking about people in school. But I think we can think about us, right? Well, we can also make connections with our classmates, maybe, or if we already have a job, maybe with our coworkers. All right, class, excellent work, everybody. Now, if you'll notice here, there are a couple of questions we did not answer. Unfortunately, I accidentally answered number one. So, but I think you can pretty much guess what the answer was, right? This article wouldn't be very useful if it if the number of older students has gone down. So no, it has increased. But let's take a look at number 3. So Yasushi, this was not one of the questions we asked, but do you want to try and make a guess? It says when older students get college credit for work experience, they, now which one do you think? Test out of classes, take community college classes, or save a lot of money? Any guess?
They save a lot. They take
Just take
they
a guess.
take community college classes.
Okay, so
I'm not sure.
all right, so Yasushi, let me illustrate that you have chosen all 3 answers at some point. Well,
B.
let's check it out.
I mean B. Yeah.
So here's the piece of advice, Yasushi.
B.
Always choose your first guess. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, your first guess was they save money, and that was the correct answer. But I
Yeah.
think we can agree A is probably true too. In fact, I do want to mention this to everybody here in the room, and Yasushi, this might be of interest to you, that if you already have a lot of work experience, oftentimes they will have exams where you can take the test, and if you pass the test, you don't have to take the course. So especially if you have experience in some career, this is one way that you can test out of those classes. So that is possible. But I do think that that's kind of the idea for the advantage, which is basically, yeah, it's cheaper. You save more money. Now, I'm really curious, Yasushi. We were talking about your country last class.
Mhm.
Is this possible in Japan? Could I, if I have work experience, could I take a test and get college credit, or I could get some sort of
Yeah,
savings?
that's one big difference from Japan. Cause once we get a job, we don't back to college
I
to
see.
get a better job. So
I see. I see.
yeah, once you get a job and get married, we don't technically go back to college.
That's it.
Yeah.
Now that's interesting. Do you think that's changing, or do you think that's going to change, or do you think it's just going to stay the same?
Yeah, I think it's going to change,
Okay.
and some do, but most of them don't do that.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
I've had
Was-
I've had lots of students from Japan over the years, and I have
Mhm.
seen a few, thinking about going back to school, and some have.
Yeah.
Some have gone back to school and gotten
Yeah.
different careers. Yeah.
There are few. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think especially because they come to the United States, they get some English. Maybe they consider a different career completely. But
Mhm.
that's pretty rare. I think that's not typical. So,
Mhm.
all right. Well, interesting. That's very interesting to learn. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so we've gotten off to a good start with our listening activity. Now, unfortunately, I don't think we have enough time to go and do another exercise. So I think we will save this for next time. So coming back to our list, let's go back to our list here. So we were talking about some of the other words that we hear. For example, if you heard in the dialogue, they talked about the word rewarding. It can be a very rewarding experience. So if you remember, if we zoom in there, something that is rewarding gives us some kind of pleasure, right? So as we said, something that could be rewarding is like getting a prize for something good. Maybe a good feeling. It could be money. So something that gives us a particular pleasure. So yeah, maybe going back to school could be a rewarding experience. It doesn't necessarily have to be for a better job. It could be just because you want to learn more things. So that's also something that adults do. So guys, I do want to mention that for everybody here in the class. You know, there are lots of different adult programming you could take just to learn something new. It doesn't have to be necessarily, you know, continuing in English or continuing a career. There are lots of other types of, you know, adult classes, things that you can study. You know, art classes, for example, right? Hishani mentioned the arts earlier, but there are lots of different types of community classes that you could take, workplace training, all of that kind of thing. So I think that's an important thing to remember as we go along. And of course, some of you, when we mention internships, yeah, I mean, we're adults. We're probably a little too old for internships now, but you know, sometimes it is a possibility to go back and, you know, get more experience or credit in some other way. So. Okay, well, I think we're going to stop there for tonight. We've filled in a couple of more ideas here on our list. I think let's, in terms of testing out of, let me go ahead and let's put that on our list since we were talking about it. So when we test out of something, that basically means we take a licensing test or some kind of test to receive college credit instead of taking the class. So in this case, this is something that does happen in the United States. In fact, we often do this a lot with high school students. There is a test that you can take if you took certain classes in high school, then you can test out of some particular requirements. So in this case, when we test out of something, yeah, that means we can receive credit for it instead of actually taking the class. So let's add that to our list before we finish here. Okay, well, guys, our time is pretty much up. I don't think we have time to jump into any more activities for this evening. So I think we will stop there. All right, everybody. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you on Thursday.
See ya, Mr. John.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Mr. John.
All right.
Thank you.
Good night, Mr. John.
Thank you, Mr.
See ya.